from New Jersey. Amazing. Welcome, everyone. All right. Well, I think that we should get started. Um, my name is Tracy T, and I am the founder of Moms on Mushrooms. This is our very first inaugural live stream for a new series that we're launching called Set, Setting, and Ethics. Discussions about psychedelic responsibility. This is in partnership with a new project that Moms on Mushrooms is so excited to be launching called the Motherboard. After hearing way too many stories and talking to way too many people who've had terrible experiences in the psychedelic space, we decided to do something about it the mom way and create a directory that is incredibly vetted, that has the mom stamp of approval of psychedelic facilitators, psychedelic guides, licensed psychedelic therapists, psychedelic retreat centers, and psychedelic group practices who, like the team at Moms on Mushrooms, have taken the vow to work ethically, in integrity, who value training, experience, and safety over anything. And so the Motherboard is a growing directory that's worldwide that offers you access to excellent psychedelic guides and retreats. And in launching this project, I had the great fortune of partnering up with Beckley Retreats, which is the literal goat of psychedelic retreats. They've kind of written the book. They've written they've written so much free material and open source material for people to access because they really value safety and integrity for an amazing psychedelic experience so that you can heal. And that's in complete alignment with the mom mission. So I'm thrilled to be launching this discussion today so that we can explore and offer you, whether you're watching this live or on repeat, some tips on how to pick a psychedelic retreat, a psilocybin retreat that's best for you, red flags to look out for, what preparation really means, what integration means, and just how to just sift through the noise and find something that really is in alignment with you, that's going to keep you safe, and that's going to give you that experience that you're really searching for. So I am pleased to bring on two amazing mamas to have this discussion today. First, we have Vianne Morales. She is the Senior VP of Operations at Beckley Retreats. She is a mom of two, a veteran Army officer, a seasoned operations strategist, and the Citadel's 33rd Black female graduate. And she's a breathwork facilitator. She serves as a Senior VP of Operations for Beckley and is a fractional startup advisor and operations consultant as well. Thank you for being here, Vianne.
Thank you, Tracy. So excited to be here.
Yes. And we also have Lisa Skye. Lisa is a mother of two. She's a master connector and community builder. Her professional background is in the hospitality, real estate, and business networking industries. And most notably, she was hired as the second employee of a little company called WeWork before leaving to launch her own co-working brand called Primary in New York City. She has spent the last few years in personal and professional life transitions while basing herself in Miami Beach, Florida, which is way warmer than where I am here in Colorado. And Lisa attended a Beckley retreat and is here to give her just firsthand experience and feedback on what she looked for and how it worked for her. So you guys have some context from someone who's been there. So with that, I would love to pass this over to Vianne to just talk to us about what to look for in a psychedelic retreat.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And it's good to see you, Lisa.
Mhm.
I am so excited to share today. And gosh, what a just wonderful opportunity, Tracy. Thank you so much for the Moms on Mushrooms community and what you guys are offering. It's, as you said, there's so many just options out there right now. And it's sometimes really hard to just sift through and decide what's the right thing to do. And often we mamas might not have the most time to get through all of it. So I hope that today we can offer you just a good place to start and the high level pieces of things that we suggest you look for in a retreat. And I also will just share a little bit about what we offer at Beckley. So I'm going to share my screen just for a few little informational pieces here. Give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, let me know if you can see that.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. Okay. As you can see, technology is not always my strong suit. But um, when I think about choosing a psychedelic retreat, I think it's really important to start with that inner inquiry. Just really exploring for yourself how you came to this decision to just, I mean, it's a big decision to try a psilocybin retreat or any psychedelic retreat. And so I think that piece of starting with the inner inquiry and discovery and maybe journaling things that brought you to this decision, what you're hoping to get out of it, the desired outcomes, as well as starting to really set your intentions for what you hope to understand or gain from your experience. For me, sometimes that will actually lead me to those starting points of filtering through what's important to me in my experience. Um, what I've seen at Beckley retreats from participants that we've had, as well as for me personally, the top four kind of grouped things that people are looking for: safety. And for me, safety also includes ethical safety and legal dimensions and risk, programming and retreat design, and the third being support and personal referrals, testimonials. Sometimes it's just nice to hear from other people, like, what do they think? How did it go for you? Is this somewhere that you felt safe? And then the practical logistics. We all know we have really busy lives, and there's a lot of factors that come into play. But for me, the most important and number one piece for us to just focus on, and I hope that shedding some light on what those elements of safety would really mean to me and mean to a lot of the members of our Beckley Retreats community, will help just put everyone in a yeah, safe and comfortable experience, especially if it's your first experience. Um, so safety to me starts with screening. A comprehensive screening process is so, so important. Psilocybin retreats in general, from a interaction and experiencing the medicine, are generally pretty safe. There are, of course, contraindications, medical contraindications that can come into play, and that's where your screening really has to be at the forefront of your application and approval process. So for us, our screening looks like completing a application, which is a medical, and mental, emotional, physical, really full, robust reflection of where you are right now. Tell us a little bit about your life, what's showing up for you, your, of course, medical history, medications that you take. And when a retreat provider is asking those questions as their first introduction to you, I think it's a great starting point. It's how you know that they're really ensuring that they can fully and safely hold space for you. So for Beckley, that's the application process, which then our team of medical screeners and as well as facilitators, trauma-informed therapists, review each application and have a short one-on-one call just to check in with each applicant. They also offer the space during those one-on-one calls to just ask questions. I think it's so important and a key piece of choosing your retreat experience, being able to ask questions and ask, how that retreat center holds space, what things that you're currently concerned about that they either do or do not offer, but having that comprehensive experience, but also an opportunity, like I said, for you to ask questions, but them for also to provide informed information. So if you have some history of heart conditions in your family, at Beckley retreats, we'll ask you to talk to your cardiologist before participating in the retreat to ensure that it's a safe opportunity for you. And then there are some medical contraindications that we aren't able to support, and we'll let people know so that we can, our goal is that everyone that we bring into our program, we can fully support mentally, physically, and emotionally.
So, Vianne, can I just interrupt? Is there, when you're talking about an application, what is, what are the benchmarks for someone who's not a good candidate? And is it should we when we're looking for a retreat, should there be kind of a pass ratio of what people, what retreat centers accept and don't think are good candidates? Or are you saying, generally speaking, for a psilocybin retreat, most people are usually accepted?
Yeah, most people are usually accepted. Now, of course, there are some exceptions to that. So, for example, at Beckley Retreats, we aren't able to bring on participants who have an active history of schizophrenia or bipolar disorders and elements like that, because it does pose a higher risk of other complications. So, in those cases, we do suggest that those individuals, and we do our best to make referrals to reliable clinicians who might be able to support them in a better and safer space one-on-one. So it's usually more severe conditions like that that will cause us to share with someone that we aren't able to fully support them. But overall, the biggest thing is for us to share the informed consent. So, for example, a lot of us have utilized SSRIs, and you might still be on a very low dose of SSRIs. At Beckley Retreats, it's important to us to share that you might be on this very low dose. It is still safe for you to participate in an experience. However, there is a possibility that your experience might be slightly dampened or dulled from that perspective. And that's something that the facilitation team needs to be aware of and will come into play when they're deciding what your dose or amount of psilocybin that you'll be taking during the experience would be. So
Got
it's
it.
those elements that we're really looking for to ensure that we're fully able to hold space for each applicant and participant.
And if people have kind of a broader diagnosis, even if it's cancer or another disease, or even if someone is processing an intense amount of grief, has just passed through a huge, like, earth-shattering, life-shattering life experience, is that still a good candidate to apply? And do you feel like a retreat would be helpful in those situations?
Yeah, I think it is on a case by case basis, but what I find is that is where your preparation and plan for integration really comes into play. How are you going to ensure that you're fully supported, you're in a safe space, and you have the support systems around you
Mhm.
to move through this experience and really and be okay and remain, in a stable environment. So when we see someone who has an intense amount of trauma or recent trauma, we really try to look to see what support systems do they have around them. Are they already working with a therapist? Will they be engaging with coaching with some of our facilitators? And so it's really exploring the fullness of each person's picture and what their support system and plan looks like, as well as being very transparent in the preparation process that this could be really challenging as you move through this, and being
Mhm.
very transparent and not sugarcoating. Like, not every experience is what sometimes media will share, where it's all, rainbows and beautiful colors. Sometimes you're really moving through moments of hardship, and you're
Mm.
processing and reprocessing things that were really difficult in life.
Mhm.
And acknowledging that and being really transparent about that is something that we prioritize at Beckley. And it doesn't mean that every experience is going to be
Right.
really, awful and challenging, and you're gonna cry for 8 hours. And that's not always the case. Every experience is very different, and the ones that I've gone into and thought were gonna be rainbows and butterflies were a little less that. And then the ones that I thought that were going to be really challenging, turned out to be a really beautiful release and process that I didn't experience. So
Yeah.
for us, it's really about transparency. And I think that's what overall you're looking for in a retreat provider, is that they're being really transparent about what the experience will look like. They're looking at what you're coming into that process with, and just sharing what support opportunities that they offer, and suggesting some external support if they don't have as robust of a offering.
Great.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to move into a little bit more around safety, and I'll kind of move through it quickly because I want to get some time with Lisa here. But the other elements of safety is, of course, on-site protocols. So you want to make sure you're looking to see that they're paying attention to medical access. If there are any emergencies, and these
Mm,
could be regular, run of the mill, can't be planned emergencies. What's their plan? Do they have a nurse maybe on site during the ceremony to be supportive? Just elements like that, as well as I am always looking for a provider with trauma-informed approaches and facilitation in psychedelic therapy. And so for those that might not be super familiar with that, it's really the basis of that is the prioritization of safety and empathy and preventing that re-traumatization,
hmm
and empowerment of individuals who have experienced trauma previously in their lives, as well as that post-experience integration to help process these new maybe insights that you've gained, but it's really preventing any additional emotional um,
hmm
or sometimes, physical distress. So that is really important to me when I'm looking for a practitioner or organization to support my experiences, um, that they are working and facilitating from a trauma-informed space. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So I'm going to move a little bit to prep and integration. And we hinted on this a little bit, and then we'll pop down to the other elements that I listed. But for me, prep and integration is a part of safety. And it really does make a huge difference in the way that people, the outcomes of psychedelic experiences. Research has shown that it makes a big impact when people have a full preparation and integration process. And when I talk about preparation, I'm referring to really the building of a toolkit almost for an experience. So you are tuning into what your intention is, you're tuning into your why and what is bringing you into that process. And maybe utilizing practices like journaling, mindfulness if you haven't maybe used meditation before, grounding techniques that you can learn and utilize. And those are elements that I always would look for in a retreat center. And for Beckley, those are the elements that we really uphold in our preparation process is trying to support people in how can we give them this almost literal toolkit of practices and just a knowledge base to really move through their experience and be able to support themselves. It's an opportunity to empower that person to really not hold themselves fully, but with the support of our team, really move through their process safely. So it could look like breath work as well, introducing breath work early on or simple breath practices when you are getting more activated during your retreat experience. Okay, well, I know I have in my toolkit these grounding practices. Let me use those and try to calm myself down or bring myself back to, a space of center and calm. So
Um,
that's, oh, go ahead.
really, yeah, I just wanted to ask really quick, and I think you might not be on the right slide, just in case
Oh,
while I'm talking. Do you have, there's probably not quantifiable numbers, but what's the kind of difference for a retreat experience if you are walked through intentional preparation prior to your retreat versus just booking a retreat, maybe not hearing from the retreat center at all, or just not doing any of the work and showing up for the retreat? Is it really like an apples to oranges type experience?
well, for me, yes, it is a very different experience, and I'd love to hear Lisa's take on this as well. But for me, I feel very almost just there's a lack of balance. And especially
Mm,
if it's a group experience and I haven't had an opportunity to meet the people that I'm about to be on retreat with, but I am supposed to go in and share so deeply and I don't even know their names. As well as just feeling really unprepared and unsettled. I think the lack of clarity and transparency sometimes when there is no preparation just gives me this sense of I'm not really sure what I'm walking into. We
mm,
haven't talked about what's gonna, happen, and I have no way to make myself feel better or calm myself or kind of just prepare what I hope to gain from it. It kind of feels like you're going on a roller coaster and you're not really sure if there will be seatbelts, there won't be seatbelts, and you're just kind of hoping for the best.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you.
Lisa, is there I wanted to ask your opinion on that prep question though, and get your thoughts.
Well, which aspect of it? Just sort of the distinction between Beckley and others, or
No, just in general, because I know that you've had some other experiences. I don't know if you've experienced any retreats where you didn't have prep versus when you did, if that felt different to you at all, and what kind of showed up for you when you did versus didn't.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that that's first, thank you for having me and happy to share with everyone who's tuning in and who eventually tunes in. And I think, vulnerability is right, the key word, and that's sort of what I'm, I guess, portraying here today, right, is my experience. And so I think, what was just like hands down, light years above any other experience that I've had, of which there've only been a handful of other experiences sitting with ayahuasca and then, mushroom, plant medicine here, mushroom at psilocybin, is that there was a therapist who had a screening call with me. Then there was another trained professional who I had another call with. And then there were 2 or 3 weeks of prep calls with a group of people who, like you're saying, I got to get to know on Zoom in this sort of safe container. And then it was like really exciting when we saw each other there in Jamaica. It was like we already kind of knew each other. And so there is definitely this kind of, there was an ease and already a sense of familial connection when we all saw each other in person, which was really beautiful. And I have not had that. There are two other specific retreats that I went on where I knew 2 or 3 of the people of the 20 people that were there, and then one where I knew, no one. And it's a different experience when you get to go in knowing people who are there, because it does sort of disarm you and put you at ease. And then for me, the biggest distinction with Beckley compared to others is this 8 weeks or so of follow-up afterwards. The idea that we've been meeting bi-weekly, and we just concluded from my mid-October retreat. And in fact, I'm spearheading the continued once a month. Our group is going to continue to have a Zoom where we're able to check in, but we have a pretty active WhatsApp chat, and everyone's just able to continue, what people call integrating. I think with a lot of other retreats, you're left to integrate on your own, and then is where you can kind of just go back to regular cycles, and patterns in your life. Whereas with this, you have almost an accountability group or bubble, so to speak, which is, I think, critical for transformation, and transitions.
Yeah, beautiful. So, Vian, tell us a little bit more about integration. Like, what is integration? It's a big buzzword right now. And then why is it so important after a retreat?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, integration is really the process of processing your experience. It's applying the insights into your daily life. How can you weave the things that you've learned or these new practices of mindfulness and meditation? And it, could be many different elements, but weaving those things and into your daily life. And it might be supporting everyone's integration does look really different. But it's really an opportunity to reflect, to engage in coaching. Sometimes it's, as Lisa shared, group discussions, but it really helps turn your insights and learnings from the retreat into, for many, lasting personal growth. And from a science-backed perspective, there is this window of neuroplasticity. And the way that I talk about neuroplasticity, it's as if there's fresh powder. So, fresh snow, and you had all these tracks laid, but a new fresh powder is laid right after your retreat experience. And you have this opportunity to lay new tracks. And so that is that integration experience. It's laying those new tracks of the way that you're going to operate in the world and things that you want to change. And integration can be really bumpy sometimes because you've gone from, in many cases and at Beckley retreats, this held and supported container to kind of being dropped back into your everyday life and things are busy and you're parenting again and you're back at work and it's hard. It's really hard to maintain some of these new
Hmm.
practices when you're not in these sacred bubbles and have
Hmm.
so many people to be right beside you without all these distractions. But I think that's where the elements that Lisa is sharing about that community support, about continuing those connections and just chatting with other people who have had a similar or the same experience as you to say, gosh, you guys, this is tough. Or I had an awesome day and, it was a little bit easier for me to drop into my meditation this morning. Or, there's this breath work practice that I shared. And just having that sense of community often really supports the integration process. So, I think it is incredibly, incredibly important if you really want to have that lasting impact of your retreat experience.
So what I'm hearing then is that when we're looking for a retreat, we need to ask or read or inquire what is the preparation process that the retreat offers for the client, and then what is the integration process? How long is it? Sounds like we want it for at least a few weeks during that, potent neuroplastic time of our brains being rewired. And how long is that? And is that actually included in the overall cost of the retreat?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And the slide that I'm currently on, I jumped to a little bit early, but it's really important to know who you are working with, right? Like
Yeah.
as we said, there are a lot of practitioners out there now. And it's not to speak poorly of anyone, but we have a lot of people who might have had their first experience and they're so inspired by what they have experience themselves that they immediately want to hold space for someone else. And while the heart of that and the intention of that comes from a really beautiful place, it's not always the safest place for other people and the
Mhm.
people that they might be holding space for. So for me, I'm always looking for people who are deeply experienced either from wisdom traditions
Mhm.
or credentialed in other psychedelic therapies and especially um, just having that balance is really
Mhm.
wonderful of wisdom traditions and
Mhm.
these more science-backed approaches. So I'm always really digging into retreat centers to see like, are they really seasoned facilitators? How long have they been doing this? How long have they been holding space? Have they been doing their own work? Are they really transparent about their values and code of ethics and how and really the participant code of ethics? What do they expect from me when I show up into this retreat experience and environment?
Mhm.
How are they expecting their community to be together and interact with each other?
Mhm.
Um, and then having a low participant to
Mhm.
facilitator ratio is really important. And that might be different when during ceremony than it is for the full retreat. You might see that some retreat centers add support, and that to me is a great sign because they know that you're never sure what's going to show up for each person in the group. There could be a point in the retreat where everyone needs support. So you want to make sure they're able to handle that situation.
Mhm.
So retreat sizes can often range from 3 or 4 people, but there are retreats that will hold 40 and 50
Mhm.
and 60 people. So just knowing what experience do you want to have? Do you want to be in a large group of people, which there can be benefits to that too, and can be a very impactful community experience? Or do you feel like you need a more held and personally supported approach? And so, if that's the case, the latter, then having a low facilitator to participant ratio is quite important. So, at Beckley, we offer a 3-to-1 ratio, so 3 participants to each 1 facilitator. And then during ceremonies, we also bring in a nurse, we bring in ceremony sitters, we bring in musicians,
Mhm.
so that the space is really fully held.
I mean, would you say, I mean, I tend to agree that that should be the standard, even if it's in a large group setting of 40 or 50 people, that the ratio should be around 3 to 4 to 1 plus assistance.
Yeah.
especially medical, in on site in the room or, very close by. Do you agree with that, or is there an opportunity? I mean, ayahuasca I know can be a little different, especially if you're in the jungle. They don't necessarily subscribe to that, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the lower the number, the
Yeah,
better. Because in my experience, it can be incredibly challenging. In a ceremony, people's energies really, they connect with each other. If things get really activated in the room, what you're hearing from someone else, if they're really in an emotional process, sometimes it can activate you as well. So things can get busy, as some of our facilitators will say, and you just want to be sure that they're really ready and there are enough hands on site that are trained
yeah,
to support this space. So in my opinion, 3 to 1 is a really good ratio. And I think when you start creeping higher and higher above that, it just means that you might not get that one-on-one support
yeah.
as soon as you need it or when you need it.
Before we kind of ask Lisa to share her stories, I'm curious about mechanisms for reporting harm, and is there a way for that's definitely something I personally want to, flesh out and develop inside the motherboard. But is
Yeah.
there a place for people to do research when they're looking for a retreat center on harm reports or, violations of ethics or misconduct? Is there a central location for that?
There's not yet a central
Yeah.
location to my knowledge,
Yeah.
but the good thing about our world now is you can just drop a couple of lines in Google and things will start popping up.
Yeah.
And so I think as you're especially looking for, and ask those questions of the retreat center if they have harm reporting practices or, do they have accountability measures in place? So, at Beckley, we really try to ensure that if a participant needs to move away from the ceremony space, that there's more than one facilitator, and usually a facilitator of the same gender is escorting and walking with that person.
Mm,
So it's asking just questions like that just to see if the retreat center that you're chatting with is attuned to those types of just harm reduction and risk reduction practices.
beautiful. And one last question before, and maybe Lisa, you can start with this, but I'm just curious, why a retreat versus a one-on-one ceremony? Who wants to answer?
Mhm.
I'm happy to answer. And
Sure.
well, maybe I bet Lisa and I have some.
I participated in both.
Yeah.
I have in my living room literally hired two people to hold space for me before, one to perform sound and one to hold space and serve medicine. So from my personal quick answer is it is always going to be back to sort of intuition, like what feels most safe to you in that moment, right? I mean, again, the research I did on Beckley, it was a hands down, like you said, the GOAT. I mean, just the gold standard globally of what is going to be a safe environment, and I'm going to get something really fantastic out of it, which I have. And then I knew people at another one, and then there was someone who told me about another one that had a group setting, and I trusted her, so and it felt like the right time to go, and so I did it. But I think for me, I just quickly want to say that in a group setting, I personally, and it maybe again, it's my personality style. I am the Aries, the Sagittarius rising fire sign. I like people, I build community. I think, when I reflect on the times that I've sat with medicine, the playing off of other people in the room and the way your emotions do that during a sitting is actually kind of beautiful, and it can
Mm,
be a real true analogy for how life actually works, right?
mm,
Like just a quick example, I had the same person next to me, in both of the two ceremonies I did at Beckley. And in the first one, we have this kind of joke with like brotherly, sisterly type energy where, he seemed distracting to me, like during the experience. And so I said to myself, do I want to sit next to him during the next sitting? It was quite distracting. And yet I found, frankly, like a sign in that where there are things in my own life right now that I'm allowing to be distracting to me. And so how
mm,
could I be with the
mhm.
distraction of him and continue to, which is of course a thread of learning in my own life right now, and be with myself in my own experience the next time, and because sometimes we can't control it. All
Yeah.
times we can't control what's going on outside of us, but we can control what's going on with us. So I personally think the group setting is pretty fantastic that way.
Mm.
Yeah.
I also
Yeah.
imagine you just have access, in terms of integration, just immediate. So many times, we do a ceremony, it's on a Wednesday, you're right back to work the next day, or, in my case, many times you're right back cooking dinner that night, and it's like, whoa, what just happened? And it's hard to integrate where you're in a bubble and you get, I imagine, like really supportive, juicy things like yoga and walks on the beach and swimming in the ocean and good food and baths and all that.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a big reason to do
I
the retreat
mean,
in the first
yeah.
place. Yeah. Night and day difference.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and to that end, if you're going to do like a short retreat, like I did a short retreat where, yeah, it's like buffer. Maybe it's how you can away from children that evening or the next day, or make
Hmm.
sure, that you set yourself up for
Hmm.
support, and success, so to speak, again, with integration, even if it's a mini integration, 24 hours, something like that.
Hmm.
And reflect
Hmm.
on came up right and through the medicine.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. And I think when you're choosing your retreat experience, those are the questions that when you do that self-inquiry, it's like, okay, what am I really looking for? Do I need that little bit more spaciousness of having 5 days on
Hmm.
site? Do I need, am I looking for other elements and practices of breath work and, meditation and being more immersed in nature
Hmm.
versus less immersed in nature. So I think those are the pieces that you can utilize to really guide you to the right setting for yourself. And sometimes it can also just be like Lisa said, that your own intuition. So for me, I know that my next experience is probably going to be a one-on-one experience.
Hmm.
I lost my mom recently,
Hmm.
and it's like that's one
Hmm.
that feels really, really like sacred. It's not to
Hmm.
say it would be a poor decision to
Hmm.
integrate that in a group, but for me, I know or my body knows that this will
Hmm.
be a really sacred processing and one that I just want to have as an internal practice. So
Hmm.
I think you really just lead with what you're feeling the most resonance with. And if it's community and there's this big desire to just be with others, lead with that. And if there's something that maybe for whatever reason, it feels better to just be one-on-one or
Hmm.
in just a much smaller container, lead with that. So I think when you're picking your retreat partner, as I would look at it, I let your intuition guide you.
And when you're looking at sort of a 5, 7 day retreat experience, how much medicine should one expect to do? And what's a red flag for too much medicine?
Oh gosh. Well, there are many practitioners out there, but I would say you want to ask first about the type of medicine that they're using and the strain of medicine that they're using. And if they give you a robust explanation of like the strength versus, how strong one medicine is versus the other. So at Beckley, we use two different strands of mushrooms, and one is about double the potency as the other. So we enter with a little bit of the softer strain, and then the next ceremony,
Mm,
because there is a little bit of resistance and build up in your system because of the shortness of the program,
yeah.
that your system will need a little bit more for you to be able to dive as deeply as you might have done the first time. So I'll share for Beckley that we have two ceremonies it's a 5 night, 6 day program.
Okay.
You have opening circle your first night. The first full day that you're on site is your first ceremony day.
Mm,
Um, and then the next day is your integration day, and then it repeats another ceremony day, another integration day, and then it's your day of closing out and departure. So many retreat centers will use that model to have two or sometimes three ceremonies. There are some retreat centers where you are working with totally different medicines and you do a lot more medicine. I think what is important to understand and to ask questions about is really how they are supporting you and integrating each medicine experience. And are they giving you the space to process, or are you just like going through this like really intense
Hmm.
back to back? And do you feel well resourced to do that? And
Yeah.
sometimes the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And
You're like, give it to me. Yeah.
yeah, and people are just like, let's go, let's do this.
Yeah.
And they get so much out of it. But there is also such an important, you have to make sure that you're ready for that. And not everyone, might have the time and space to be ready for that. So I think when you're choosing between different retreat partners, I would always ask about what their dosage is, the strength of the strain. And so at Beckley, our first ceremony is between 1.5 to 3 grams of mushrooms, and that's
Hmm.
the lighter strain. And then our second ceremony is usually between 3 grams to 5 grams.
Mm.
So it is a significant, good amount of medicine. Heroic doses is what they're
Yeah.
usually referred to in that amount, but I think it is really important. I think when you start to get way higher in doses, you just start asking questions about why.
Yeah.
It's really, really necessary for me to do all of this medicine, and if there's a good, understanding and answer in there, and you can understand what's happening and you feel comfortable with it, I think it's really about trusting who you are working with
Mm.
when you're deciding that dose. But at Beckley, we have a custom dose for every participant.
Mm. So, Lisa, when you went to your first retreat before, were you scared? Were you excited? And what, as a mom, to leave your kiddos and go away and have this incredible, like this experience that still like has a lot of question marks for people? What guided you there, and how did you feel before you went? And what was your takeaway after? Yeah.
You're talking about my first experience before Beckley, yes? Because Beckley I
Yeah.
just do in October, yeah. I mean, I think, one of the things you said in my introduction is that I've been going through transition over the last 2 years. And so, here comes I can feel the butterflies, in my heart, just the vulnerability part. But, I've been going through a lot of transitions. I just had a business in New York City that went into bankruptcy. I just went through a divorce 2.5 years ago. I have my kids are 7 and 8 now. But so, a lot of this started when they were 3 and 4, two little
Mm.
boys, moved from New York to Portland, Oregon to Miami in under a year. Just a lot of change and a global pandemic,
Yeah. Yeah.
like just that, like just those things.
Just
And
a few
so
things. Yeah.
a lot happening. And so in general, I lost my dad suddenly on Valentine's Day 20 years ago. And that was really, a catalyst for me because I was 26 at the time. And it was the biggest bittersweet of my life. I often say because it's bitter, I still miss him tremendously, and often, and sweet because it was the catalyst for a lot of personal development,
Yeah.
growth work. And so I think as I started going into this next phase over, the last 3 years of all these transitions, my default now is like to start seeking, like, okay, how can I turn myself over or attract something to me that's going to be an opportunity for more self-exploration. And so I was doing a 9-month positive psychology course online, and the woman who founded it described going to this retreat in Mexico. She said she was going again 5 months later, and
Mm.
I'm in. My
Mm.
body was like, yes. And so I went. And so that was pretty intense, I will say, in that talk about a lot of different medicines in one week, but I was just like a full body yes. And I didn't really ask a lot of questions. And so in the one week, Monday was a 3-hour sweat lodge. Tuesday was cacao ceremony and breath work. Wednesday was combo. Thursday we smoked bufo, and Friday we sat with ayahuasca. And so
Wow.
it's like a lot in a week. I will say that it was amazing though, and I would 100% do it again because I felt so safe in the container. It was really a beautiful build up actually to the ayahuasca,
Hmm.
which was potent of everything. And the woman was a plant, medicine woman, practicing for, over a decade, 10, 12, 15 years, something with her husband, and then lots of facilitators and
Yeah.
support ratio. It was a really great experience. And so that was what prompted me to, I want to sort of like spit this out, where when I think about pillars of wellness in my life now, I've often come back to three, which are, am I eating well? Am I sleeping well? Am I exercising? And for me, I discovered Joe Dispenza a year and a half ago, and I've been doing a lot of meditation. So meditation is the fourth now for me. But the fifth, sort of like pillar of wellness for me is going to be periodically sitting with plant medicine, because I really have found that it's the greatest way that I can sort of go inside. And meditation is akin to what
Yeah.
happens to me in the plant medicine retreats also, where I'm able to tap that real subconscious, the psyche, and to find answers or have visions of what I need to see, right?
Yeah.
They say the medicine doesn't always give you what you want, but it gives you what you
Yep.
need. The Rolling Stones, and I've really found that to be the case, and it's why I've sat, probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 times with various medicines at this point. And I really enjoy it and have great respect for the positivity that it's brought into my life. And I would say above all, like, it's this sort of nervous system, like regulation, that the meditation is done, but also the plant medicines as well, because I don't know, it right, just
Yeah.
drops to a greater sense of calm that I am grateful for.
So having done such a variety of different experiences, including, at your house, or what do you look for now? Like, what are your non-negotiables when you're going into a retreat? And especially since that's what we're talking about, like, what are the things that you're just like, if they don't have that, I'm not going.
Well, the experience for sure. I mean, Vian's already said a few of the things, right? The experience, the support, right? Facilitators, like the safe, you hear this catchphrase a lot, safe container,
Mm-hmm.
safe container, safe container, safe container. Like, yeah, I mean, coming, I would not probably go to a retreat that I don't have the ability to speak to other people who've attended the same retreat to hear their experience, albeit everyone's experiences are different. But I think that that's like probably a number one. I'm not going to go blindly into without at least, that aspect of the safety, but the facilitator to a participant ratio, I think is critical also.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you sound like you've really benefited from the long form integration as well. Like you're
Yeah.
keeping going with your group and
Exactly. Again, it's like, I mean, it's like, it is next level, because, there's an app, there are prompts, there are downloadable worksheets. I
oh
have
wow.
another woman we did it of our own volition. We're very similar, and have similar stories and backgrounds, but we decided to become accountability partners, and we, are now doing like biweekly calls where we're going through the worksheets of follow-up that are assessing things like our limiting beliefs and
Mm.
value systems and needs, and even action, as far as action items if we decide that we want that. But I think that going through a divorce, going through a bankruptcy, going through the challenges that I did in starting my own business, and now I'm no longer part of that business officially as of a couple months ago, it's been a lot. And I've really become present to the limiting sort of thought processes, the ways that I've been really getting stopped, and like
Yeah.
the stuck thoughts, that the victim mentality. And I think that that's where I'm really continuing to look to the plant medicine as a way to truly, and meditation the same, create new neural pathways
Yeah.
so that I literally stop thinking about aspects of my life in one way and start thinking about them
Mm.
and responding to them in a different, more powerful way. Because, I don't want to sort of be this dragged down feeling victim of my life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a proponent of positive psychology. I have a growth mindset historically, but there was a lot of stuff happening over the last couple of
Yeah.
years that energetically got me down. And so I feel like this has been a path to break through and break up, through.
Mm. Yeah. I want to ask one kind of hard-hitting question, and I don't mean to sound triggering, but should women be concerned about going away, especially out of country, to a retreat, to a psychedelic retreat? Do we do you think that what we're hearing, and it may just be within the psychedelic space, like we hear these bad experiences, we hear this bad news. Is that as pervasive as actually people working in integrity and with ethics? What are your thoughts on a woman is, even if she's traveling around alone and choosing not to do it, like with a bestie, is she safe?
And you're talking to me or
Sure, both
Pia?
of you. I'd love to just get kind of
Yeah.
your temperature check on the whole space.
Yeah, I mean, mine goes back to the sort of the vetting process of who am I going to see? Who are the facilitators? What is their background? I mean, we're in this day and age of powerful information. We have the
Mhm.
tool literally at our fingertips to
Yeah.
read reviews, see what people are saying about people, right? Glass door or whatever. I mean, you have like all these, I don't know if you're going to find retreats that are in Mexico or Costa Rica or some of these types of, countries there, but you can speak often to other people who have attended, and then it's up to you to ask the hard questions, right? If that is a concern for you, right? Being in a scary setting situation, then you have to have the courage before you go to ask
Yeah.
that question,
Yeah.
right? I mean, for me, again, I had a woman leading the retreat. There was a woman facilitate, like sort of host lead, and then literally the plant medicine was served. The ayahuasca was served by a plant medicine woman
Mm,
there. In Beckley's case, Dingle and Kosu are both women who led my
mm,
particular retreat. I know they certainly have men, and then the other three facilitators were men
mm,
there, but the two lead facilitators of this particular retreat happened to be women. So that certainly, you're right, creates a more safe
mhm,
setting. But in general, I've found that facilitators are variety. It's a combination of men and women,
mhm.
and that in and of itself, for me, has created a sense of safety.
Yeah.
What you have to add to that.
Yeah, I really agree. I think it is there is such a opportunity for us to dig a little deeper from an information perspective. And gratefully, we are in a space where people are reporting what is happening to them and being vocal and transparent. And it doesn't mean that everyone is reporting because we all know that is still, an issue. But when you are looking for a retreat provider, I think there is a real opportunity to look at the dynamic and boundaries, like what's their code of ethics? Does
Mhm,
it clearly state the boundaries between
mm,
the facilitators and participants? Does
mhm,
it clearly state in, for us, we have a community agreements that all of the
mm,
participants agree to. And it clearly states the boundaries between
mm,
participant to participant and facilitators to participant and really everyone on site. Our community agreement spans everyone who you come in contact with.
mm.
So for me, it's really finding and digging into things like that and asking those questions because if a retreat provider doesn't have their own code of ethics or is a little like taken aback if you ask for that or ask about that, I think,
Red flag.
there's some
Red
room for
flag.
pause.
Yeah.
There's some room for pause there. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Keep
maybe
looking. Yeah.
let's keep going.
That's good. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
but
and at Beckley, that was continuously reinforced throughout the week I was there, were just sort of the safety protocols, if you will, and the standards.
yeah, yeah.
That's good to hear because it's not, we worry potentially about facilitators, but then you also have to, especially if you're in a co-ed group, you
Yes,
want to make sure that you're safe and that the code of conduct is accepted by everyone who's with you too.
Yeah, they
yes.
reiterated it throughout the week, almost daily, I think, when we were there.
Beautiful. Well, we have just a few minutes left. If there's any quick questions, maybe just drop them in the chat for time's sake, and we can try to just fire off some rapid fire if anybody has any questions to ask.
And while anything is coming in there, my 2 cents, unsolicited advice, so to speak, which I offered at the Beckley retreat also, because the night before our first sitting, it was apparent there were some people who had experienced no medicine before, and then there were some people who
Mm,
medicine, and then kind of me just a little bit. But I had this one beautiful piece of advice that was given to me that was, number one, congratulations if you've made the decision, the choice, the powerful choice to come and sort of face your demons or whatever it might be, reasoning
yeah.
for being open to whatever it is that comes. And so when you're sitting with the medicine, the thing I would encourage people to do is to speak truly to the medicine and to say, show me, but show me with love. because
Mm.
you have
Mhm.
the ability to sort of transform the medicine, I think, within ourselves. And that for me has been a powerful tool that was told to me in the first sitting that I ever had. And it's really been very helpful where if my body's sort of tensing up because there's some vision, something, feeling, emotion coming on, to just kind of come back to like the show me with love, it was very helpful.
I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah, we don't always have to suffer like the said at the very end. You don't
No,
always have to
no,
suffer for with
no.
every, and even if it is,
Yes.
even if it's hard, if you have space holders and you're supported and you feel safe, then
Mhm.
the prayer is that you're like, okay, I can do this hard thing, but not I can't do this. I got to get the hell out of here,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to
Yeah.
say, show me with love, and I, as someone who is shedding her martyr shadows. I think who kind of loves to be like, let me give me the hardest journey possible. It doesn't have to be like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that
One.
was the word that was the word that came up for us. That was like, I kind of want to get it tattooed here, like this word allow, like if it feels
Mm,
scary, good, bad, just allowing it all to happen. I see the
yeah.
question.
Yeah, Jennifer, I was going to actually ask that. If you wanted to opt out of medicine, whether you didn't want to take a higher, the attended dose, or maybe you just feel like I'm not supposed to take medicine today. I have thoughts on that too, because I think every time I go into ceremony, I'm like, I'm not supposed to do this today, but you do it anyway. So there is a little bit of like trust in the space, and that's where the preparation really does come in, where you are allowing yourself to have this experience, be it as it may. But how would you speak to that, Vian?
Yeah, I mean, I think you being able to have autonomy over your own experience, you should be able to say, no, that feels like too much for me, or at least have a conversation with the facilitation team. And I mean, it's not to say like our facilitators will never force you to take, and I'll just speak for Beckley Retreats, we're never going to force you to take medicine that you don't want to take, but we will offer the space to explore. Is it just hesitancy and
Yeah.
nervousness that where you just don't feel like you want to dive in? Or does it really just feel like a hard no for you? And if it's a hard no, then, let's explore a different opportunity for you, or let's just do less, where a amount of medicine that you feel and a dose that you feel comfortable with. But before each ceremony, we have one-on-one conversations with our
Mm,
participants to ask that question and let them know, we're going into ceremony. How are you feeling?
mm,
Especially on the second ceremony. Do you want to dive deeper, or was last time like that was good? We are not going deeper than we went last time,
yeah.
So I think having a practitioner that will have those conversations with
Mm,
you, let you advocate for yourself, is really important. And you should feel heard when you're going into ceremony. You should
yeah.
absolutely feel comfortable with what's about to take place.
I love
For
that.
whatever it's worth, of course, I can't help but chime in and say that in my very first retreat, there were two women who sat out and they both wished they hadn't. And then
Yeah.
in the retreat in Beckley in October, there was one woman who, between the ceremonies, was like, I think I'm going to sit out the next one. And whatever it was, and the conversation she had with, our facilitators and what have you, she sat, we all sat, nobody didn't sit both times. And she was very glad that she did. So
Oh, good.
so far I have yet to meet anybody who's like, I wish I hadn't, because there's always something that comes of it.
It's kind of like, getting all the way to Disneyland and not going on the roller coaster, Yeah, you worked so hard to get there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions? We're 3 minutes over, so I want to be mindful of everyone's time. And thank you, ladies, so much for this. Any other questions really quick that we can fire off before we part ways? And just as a reminder, this will be archived on the Moms on Mushrooms YouTube if you want to share this with anyone. Jarn, if you want to drop the link to Beckley in the chat, if anyone wants to check them out. Two of our wing women inside Mom are going to actually be going to a Beckley retreat soon. And I will say that the preparation and the intention behind it has been really behind, getting them onboarded has been really beautiful. And I think that's why I'm so glad to be partnered with you. And yeah, if anyone has any other questions, you know where to find us, momsonmushrooms.com.
And Tracy, I just want to offer really quickly that we'll also provide a copy of Beckley Retreat's comprehensive guide to choosing a psychedelic retreat that goes a little bit more in depth than I was able to today, because an hour goes by so
So
fast.
fast.
But we certainly would love for anyone that has questions to shoot them our way, and always happy to support this incredible community.
Beautiful. Yes, we'll be following up. We'll send you guys that PDF. It's also going to be inside the motherboard directory in our resources section for anyone who's a member of that directory. All right, everyone. Thank you. Ladies, thank you so much for your work and your openness and your vulnerability. This is what we need. This is a beautiful way to go into 2025. So thank you so much.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you
Thanks,
for having me.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.